Well, welcome everybody to Lussa. Lussa's 735 acres. It was part of one of the very original blocks, the Patani blocks, which encompasses all this land that was confiscated from Maori. And all the land that you see when you came through the cutting is basically part of it. And this original property was about 10,000 acres, but as you know, they were cut up with rehab and what have you, ended up at 735. There's about 160 hectares of low easy, and we've got about 100 hectares of gorge. So you've got the front country here is quite easy, then you've got a gorge, and then you've got some steeper stuff over the back. Rainfall about 900 to 1100 mil a year. We're 120 to 234 metres above sea level here. On the property we have 1100 stud Romney ewes. We've got about 100 Suffolk/Suff Tex and 100 Pole Dorset stud ewes. We have 200 roughly Friesian Hereford in calf to a Charolais. They were down the road in a runoff that you would have seen coming up, and we're feeding them, break feeding them now on lucerne that is grown down on the Dartmoor when you came through. For those that were on the smaller bus, it would have been pointed out to you. Now, just very quickly, Graham asked me just to talk about how we're different, and I'm not from a farming background. We bought this place in about 1995. Never came from a farming background. I'm a townie. That's how the locals describe me here. I was a townie. So you tend to do things differently. I've had 2 jobs. My first job was with New Zealand Rail. Well, actually 3. I worked for James Bond as a kid. That's a pretty cool job. James Bond was a jeweller. But then my second job, I worked for New Zealand Rail, and my third one was working for ourselves. What do? Horticulture. We produce about 32,000 cartons of apples a year. Viticulture, we do a couple 100 tonne of Sauvignon Blanc and of Chardonnay. That would translate to about 152,000 bottles. We own a PT, a private trading establishment, have for about 20-25 years, and we teach kids that have been disadvantaged at school or have no NCA level 1 or level 2. We've taught about 50,000 of them over the years, so education is a real passion for me. We have offices that run from Pukekohe through to Wellington, and in terms of size in the sector, YMCA, Salvation Army, which would be names that would be known to you all, are big players. We sit right in the middle of those, so we're a reasonably big player. I'm also the president of the UFS Pharmacy in Napier. That's one of Napier's oldest businesses, if not New Zealand. It's 123 years old, and we have 6,000 members at that pharmacy, and I'm in my 8th term there. And of course we have the stud. Now we fly, or I fly very much under the radar, big time. So it's probably the first time publicly that I've ever acknowledged what I do. And to many of you here, you've asked me, what you do, and I'll say to you, I'll do this or that. But I've never ever said collectively what I've done. Now what I want to do is just try an experiment. I don't know whether this is going to work, but I'd love you all to stand up, and I'm going to ask you questions, and if you can answer those questions affirmatively, I want you to sit down. So if everyone could stand up for me for a minute, please. Okay, now, if you've been to Rarotonga on holiday and you've driven around Rarotonga on a Rarotonga driver's licence, would you please sit down? Okay. If you were an early adopter of SIL, would you please sit down? If you've been to the races in the Manawatu, Hawke's Bay or the Bay of Plenty and have bought a race book, would you please sit down? I don't ask if you ever won any money, but that's another thing. Now, if you were farming back in the 80s when your sheep were being sold as frozen carcasses and sent off to Iran, remember those days? They used to have the big old frozen carcasses and off they went to Iran. So you've been farming a little while, please sit down. Now, if you've ever had a promotional flyer, remember the days before the mergers of PGG and Williams and Kettle, but you had Williams and Kettle, Reed Farmer, Taranaki Farmer, who else was there? Williams and Kettle. If you ever got one of the flyers from those people, that sold gates and hinges and stuff like that, and you've had a look through one of those, please sit down. Now, if you've ever sent, for those that are still standing, if you've ever sent a text message, if you've got a mobile phone and you've ever sent a text message from 021 to 027 or 027 to 021, would you please sit down? Now, what I can tell you is that those people that are standing are the only people in my business career that I haven't touched with my work. So, yeah, thank you, you can sit down. So just very quickly, I'll cap off. Rarotonga, driver's licences. Was working over there on a trade mission, and one of the local ministers, they got ministers of almost everything in Rarotonga, he said to me, look, we want to make some money. And he said, you got any ideas? And I said, well, yeah, driver's licences, because they're cardboard. And I said, you can make them plastic and sell them for $15. And he said, can you do that? And I said, yeah. He said, well, do it. So I did. The one with Sil was an interesting one. I was a partner in that agency, and in the inception of Sil, back when George Cruikshank was involved, they came to the agency to launch Sil and do the advertising. So I was involved in the very early days of the creative work that was done in the advertising for Sil. Racebooks. The late John Ormond came to me and said, I hear you're a bit creative, Cole. Can you sort out a way that we can actually do racebooks faster than we're currently doing? It takes us 5 days to produce one. Got it down to 4 hours. So, and that was picked up by those other racing areas. The promotional flyer one, again, being involved in an ad agency, I've had 3. Plexus was the buying group for PGG, Taranaki farmers, Reed farmers, and all of those. That was almost before Farmlands. There was a co-op there already, purchasing behind the scenes. So we produced those flyers right throughout New Zealand and did a whole lot of other promotional work for those individual companies. They didn't have their own marketing teams in those days. It was centrally done from Wellington. Now, the 021, 027 text one's an interesting one because I have a web company as well. And we were contacted by, we're doing some work in the US, and the guys that create the bridge or the electronic bridge that talked between Vodafone and Telecom was done in the US, and we managed that for them here in New Zealand. So what you can see is that very diverse business interests, but some key themes. And the key themes are that generally there's a rural theme to it. Because when I worked for New Zealand Rail, I finished up as the agricultural marketing manager. I was the guy that had to negotiate with the freezing works to send that mutton. And in fact, and this is digressing a little bit, but at the time we went to the meat board and said, look, this is costing you guys a lot of money, and we think we can do it cheaper, the local port manager and myself. And I wouldn't say we're told to bugger off, but they basically said, look, nah, we're happy with what we're doing. And what they were doing is they were selling that meat free ship's hook. So when those ships came to New Zealand, they didn't care how many ports they went to. The cost was on the Iranians. Our argument was the cost was on the farmer because the Iranians factored in the cost of the port calls. They were calling it Picton, Whangarei, Invercargill, you know, they were calling all over the country. Now, we rationalised those port calls down to about 5 ports. It took us 3 years, but we did it. And when I say we, the rail and the Port of Napier, because there was an advantage to us commercially to transport that meat. It was no advantage to us for GRC Kaiti to push it across the Gisborne Wharf. Better for us to put it on rail and bring it down to Napier. But what it did do is it started to lead to the closure of some of those ports, which is another story. Now, what I'd like to do, I need to thank some people because Romney New Zealand have been a great help to me. When I first started farming, I needed to meet people and I needed to find out how it works. So there's a whole lot of you that I've met over the years, and I want to say thank you very much, and Romney New Zealand's one. That I've learnt so much from you, and this sector is unique because other sectors, will generally shun you away. If you want information, you pay for it. In this one, you give it away for free. Now, the sad part about that is when you give something away for free, it's hard to have a value on it. And I don't think, to be fair, that anyone in this room truly values the information that you're given. If you're in the sectors that I'm working in, the other sectors, it's hugely, hugely expensive. Now, I also have a very active mind, and it's going pretty quick. And what that means is that if you sit next to me on a bus, I'm the biggest pain in the ass that you've ever sat next to, because I'm asking questions all the time. What's going on here? How does that work? And this is why I love the guys at Romney New Zealand, because when they tell me something, I always ask why. It's not because I don't trust them, but it's just simply I want to know how it works. And I'm surprised, absolutely flabbergasted, how many of you accept what you're told on the first time. First time. You accept it. I don't know. I don't know. That's why I say I'm flabbergasted. And how that actually works is when I first bought this property, I was told a stock unit. What's a stock unit? Because that was on the first report when I got a report written about this, stock units. So what's a stock unit? Sheep 1, cattle 6. So I asked, how's that work? They said, well, it's always been like that. Sheep 1, cattle 6. So I asked around, and a lot of older time guys said to me, sheep 1, cattle 6. I'm thinking, that's consistent. But then I'm thinking, no, there must be more to this. So I started digging. Now, you all know that that's not true, is it? A sheep isn't 1, a cattle's not 6. And it makes a hell of a difference to how you manage. But, you know, if I had have accepted what I was first told, then I was going down the wrong road when I started off. Now, what I want to do is talk to you a little bit about how I'm different. Now, how I'm different is shearers. Shearers come onto this property. And I value and I respect and I trust them. I value and I respect and I trust them. Now, ask yourself, if you've got a person standing there with your most valuable asset, your ewe, tits up, with a knife in his hand, an electric knife in his hand, and you don't value, respect or trust him, who's the idiot? Who's the idiot here? So it's very important. And in fact, with our orchards and stuff like that, people can destroy a year's production. A year's production. So if you don't value, respect and trust them, you're not going to get the best out of them. And it's really interesting because when you talk to the shearers, they'll tell you a different story, a vastly different story. Now, I'm not going to go into that because that's your own, but I can tell you, if you want to know how to do it, I can give you some ideas. Now, I'm different because the ewes, Charlotte, you said at Romney, New Zealand, you said one farm has done X yesterday at the talk. With that farm, the one. So we test everything. We test all our animals with the DNA, all our ewes, every single animal. So a ewe is as much part of the production as a ram to me. And we are using a formative approach. So what I mean by a formative approach is that when I put a ewe and a ram together, I know, if I know the DNA, I know what I'm going to get, pretty much. If I know what the ram has and I don't know what the ewe is, subject to what the ram DNA is, I half know what I'm going to get. So when we're doing our testing, it's almost to validate what I already know. And it's quite good because what we can do is I can extrapolate or map out our potential growth or where we're heading. If we say we want the MyMax gene in, I can work out very quickly how fast we can put that in across the whole mating of the flock and how many years it will take to achieve a set result. Now, I'm different because I'm chasing SIL ACE. Now, I know there are some in here that don't, and good on you. I mean, that's one of the advantages of SIL, you can do that. But I'm chasing SIL ACE. And I'm not part of any, I'm part of Romney New Zealand and part of their meat trial in Palmerston North. But other than that, I'm not part of any other breeding group. We do it all ourselves. So our top ram here, 2670 on SIL ACE. The lowest one's running at 18. The lowest ewe is 10. The highest is 24. The median of our ewes on SIL ACE is 1539. We have 6 rams currently on the August ACE summaries. Now, I'm different because I don't want to be the biggest ram seller. We have a stud. I don't want to be the biggest ram seller. We sell about 200 to 250 rams a year, and we're very happy with that. And the reason is that because the rams are only a small component of a farming operation, and how those rams are managed is critical, I'm as interested in trying to help them manage them as I am breeding them. So there's a subtle difference here, and that's where that education component comes out. I'm different because this is a commercial operation. When I first bought this in '95, I got told about pick orders, and I thought, oh crap, I am going to be this old as I am now before I even get anywhere near the top end of a pick order. 20 years, I thought, bugger that. I want to be up there now, and I want to work out how I can get there now. So the easiest way was to get involved in a stud. Now, a stud makes sense because it's just good management practice. How you manage a stud and how you record and how you look at things is good management practices. Now, it's labour intensive, I'll give you that, but in fact, the technology you'll see today has saved us a lot of time. It's been great. I'm different. We're a bit late in the adoption of EID. We didn't go down the Farm IQ path. We were just running a little bit late on that one. And I regret it now, to be quite honest, because it's saving us a lot of time. Now, where the technology really kicks in, which is interesting, this mating, our ewes gained 11.4 kilos average over mating. The best 30 ewes, Romney ewes here, put on 18 kilos. Now, that's one advantage of EID. You know, they collect the information, it goes in and you can pull it back off. So it's accurate and it's bang on. Now, I don't crimp on technology. So when we do it, we do it. Don't half do it. You do it. And the only reason, actually, I'll tell you what, there is a reason why you wouldn't want to get into technology, a really good one, if you don't want to know. So if you're quite happy to be working as you're working in the dark, don't get into technology. Okay? It's a good reason. Now, I'm not a fan of nursing substandard animals, and in fact, when this condition scoring thing came up, we had to bring some in to condition score at the bottom end. And my reasoning is very clear. We don't have a hospital paddock here. If it's alive, but heading towards being dead, it's heading towards a truck to become chops or dog food. That's it. I'm not interested in managing animals through it because it takes you longer to pick up a dead carcass and throw 2 slinkies on the road than it does to fix it in the first place and collect some money. So there's an opportunity cost if you're sitting around with substandard animals, for whatever reason. They could add pleurisy, facial eczema, and we do, John, we do get facial eczema here. We had a real burst this year. Not as bad as you get it though. But you know, you get one of those animals, they're gone. Now I'm different in that all of the things that I've told you about technology and stuff like that is for naught. Because I couldn't survive here if it wasn't for Pete Todd. You might stand up, Pete, because that way people know who you are. So Pete's my best kept secret and a great friend. Now, when we do all the technology stuff and the numbers and all of that, you know, I like that. That book gets closed and Pete comes in and it's all by eye. All of the books, the numbers are gone. He could kill the top 20% of Sil Ace rams in this flock. I've never questioned him. I always ask, you know, what's wrong with that animal? Tell me. But we never look back. Now, I said to my son, Chris, he was on the other bus with you. He's a stock agent in Tuakau. I said, what's one of the most frustrating things you got, mate, with your job? He said, farmers, Dad. I said, well, you're a stock agent, for Christ's sake. You know, it's going to happen. But he said, no. He said, I go out and I pick bulls for people. And I said, oh, yeah. He said, you know what they do? He said, I pick them, and then they turn around and put them back in. He said, why did I pick them in the first place? And that's what happens. You know, you go through and you do your cut and you've got all your numbers right, and then you go, oh, it's too many. I'll bring some back, you know. And I've had guys in here and they go, the wool guys are a good example. I come through and they say, we'll go through the wool. How many do you want out, Colin? I said, I want those out that aren't right. That's it. So if it's 10, 20, 30, I don't care. He said, you sure? I said, yep. And that's the way to do it. You've either got to be ruthless or else you'll end up breeding a substandard sheep. the indexes and the technology is a part of it. But good old-fashioned stockmanship is another part. Now, what I can tell you, and this blows me away, and I should have actually asked Peter Ames here somewhere, I don't know how this works. When I go to Pete's, we breed here all of the ram lambs and ewe lambs that go down to Pete's, that we're keeping the balance are finished here and they go to the works. Now, Pete will put up to me about 10 rams that he feels are stud worthy. At that point, we pull out sill. Now, it blows me away that 80% of the rams that he picks out are within the top 20% on sill. Now, I can't work that out mathematically, how he can do that. So what it says to me is that somehow there is a correlation between good animals and the sill indexes. There is a correlation there. Or else it would be the other way. He'd pick 20 out and they could be the bottom of the index. But it doesn't appear that way. And Pete doesn't get the index, so he can't cheat. And the animals aren't marked either, so he doesn't know. So it's all done by eye. Now, we are different. All lambs are tagged at birth. This is an interesting thing as I start asking questions about how studs work. I don't know how they work out which one went with which, unless you're using DNA. But we, Jeremy, he tags every lamb at birth, and we monitor the ewes and we monitor what they're doing. Now, the other thing is I'm different. I don't look for a silver bullet. With due respect, there is no silver bullet in farming. It's just good old hard work. And there's a hell of a lot of people that are selling products and services and rams on the promise of a silver bullet. And, I mean, those people get sorted out of the industry over time. You've seen them come, you've seen them go, you've seen the breeds come and go. Remember the East Frisian, biggest thing ever. And I heard Dorian Garrick one day said, East Frisian, he said, nothing wrong with the Romney. He said, the thing wrong with the Romney is you guys don't know how to feed the bloody things. And he said, don't think that an East Frisian's going to do it without feeding it either. And I sat back and thought, whoa, that's pretty logical. So there is no silver bullet. So I have not spent a lot of time trying to find one. Now, another expert said, and this was interesting about DNA, sitting in a shed and he goes, how many kids have you got? I'm thinking, 4. We've got 4, 3 girls and a boy. And he goes, same siren, same dam? I said, yep. Hope so. He said, are your kids different? And I said, well, yeah, they are. They are different. And he said, same nature, same nurture, eh? They all brought up the same house, you know, day to day, you've been together all the time? Yep, yep. He said, oh, and they're different? Yep. He said, so you're going to buy that ram and that bull and you expect it to throw like peas in a pod. And yet you can't do it with your own family. So that opened my eyes and I thought, there is something about what we expect and what we anticipate, but often it's not built on reality. And I'm different also in that time is money. A good example, if we've got our first ewes to lamb, they're lambing now. You'll see some of the lambs out there when you go out to the shed. The first to lamb are generally the first to dock and they're the first to market. Now, what's the bet that on any farm, they're not first outside the gate? Because we've got 4-wheelers, they're probably way the hell down the back. Now, the best piece of advice I could ever have if you want to learn about time and motion, there's a real easy way. Don't have a motorbike, walk. And when you walk, you suddenly realise that's a bloody long way out the back and it's easier to put them out the front. So time and motion in farming is critical to us here because if the laneways that have been designed here have saved us 20 to 30 minutes a movement that's in and out. Now that 20 to 30 minutes is less time in the yards, it means you can bring in smaller mobs and so on, so on, so on. So it does all help at the end of the day. Now, and the very last one is, I could say I'm different, but then in fact I'm not. I'm probably the same as everyone in this room. And that is that I value family. And I value living on the farm and being able to be close to our family. Now, an example is this wedding here. This has all been done by Nick and Ash, my daughter and son-in-law to be. and their friends and the rest of the family. Now, they've spent, we've spent several weeks just getting together and talking and having cups of tea and shifting things around and bale wrapping things and stuff like that. Look, with due respect, we could have gone to town, into town, walk in, walk out, done. But we didn't. Because this is just not simply a wedding, it's about two families getting together and two families enjoying each other's company. So with that, I'd like to close and just welcome you to Lussa, and I'm hoping you're going to have a good time here, and welcome to participating and being part of our family. Thank you very much.